in a quiet corner of the enchanted world, where towering mountains met dense, shimmering forests, two creatures lived who couldn't have been more different. Amara, the tiny fairy, was no larger than a butterfly, with translucent wings that glimmered like sunlight on water. She loved the forest, spending her days nurturing flowers and singing to animals. In the shadow of the mountains lived Bran, a lonely giant. He was so large that even the tallest trees barely reached his knees. His deep voice echoed like thunder, and his heavy footsteps shook the earth. Though Bran was kind at heart, the animals and smaller creatures were terrified of him. So he lived in solitude. One morning, as Amara fluttered through the forest, she came across an enormous footprint in the soft soil. It was wider than the largest pond she had ever seen. Curiosity got the better of her, and she followed the trail, dodging crushed branches and disturbed rocks. When she reached the edge of the forest, Amara gasped. There, sitting on a boulder, was Bran. His head hung low, and his massive hands rested on his knees. Who are you?" Amara asked cautiously, her voice barely audible. Bran looked up in surprise, his green eyes wide with wonder. "I am Bran," he said, his voice gentle despite its rumbling depth. "Who are you?" "I'm Amara, a fairy," she said, fluttering closer but staying out of reach. Bran tilted his head. "A fairy? You're so small. And you're so big," Amara replied with a nervous laugh. Over time, Amara and Bran began to talk, their curiosity turning into companionship. Amara showed Bran the beauty of the forest, teaching him the names of flowers and the songs of birds. In return, Bran used his strength to clear fallen trees and redirect rivers, making the forest a safer and more vibrant place. The other creatures of the forest began to notice. At first, they were wary, but they saw that Bran's massive hands were careful, and his thunderous laughter was filled with joy, not menace. One day, Amara asked, "Why do you live alone, Bran?" Bran hesitated. "I've always been alone. Everything is so fragile. I'm afraid I'll break something or someone." Amara smiled. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. You're not alone." One stormy night, disaster struck. A powerful windstorm tore through the forest, uprooting trees and sending animals scattering. A massive tree fell, trapping a family of rabbits under its branches. Amara rushed to Bran's cave, her tiny wings struggling against the wind. "Bran, the forest needs you," she cried. Without hesitation, Bran followed Amara. When they reached the fallen tree, Bran carefully lifted it, freeing the frightened rabbits. His enormous hands shielded them from the rain as Amara led them to safety. As the storm passed, the animals and creatures of the forest gathered around Bran, no longer afraid. They chirped, squeaked, and buzzed their thanks. "You see," Amara said, landing on Bran's shoulder, "you're part of this forest now, just like me." From that day on, Bran was no longer the lonely giant. He and Amara worked together, caring for the forest and its creatures. The animals grew to love Bran's gentle strength, and he became a guardian of the enchanted woods. Though they were as different as the sun and the moon, the fairy and the giant proved that friendship has no bounds. Together they brought harmony to a world that had been divided by fear, showing that even the unlikeliest of friends could create something truly magical.